In the face of unrelenting suffering, have you ever questioned God's plan? This is a question that resonates deeply within the human soul, a question that we, in our darkest hours, cannot help but ponder. It is not merely an intellectual exercise, but a cry from the heart when faced with the vicissitudes of life and the pains that mar our existence. We wonder, perhaps with a touch of desperation, about the nature of our Creator's design, struggling to reconcile the apparent randomness of our suffering with the idea of a purposeful and benevolent deity. Stay with us until the end, where we will offer a special prayer for those enduring hardships. This promise, dear friends, serves as a beacon of hope. In a world brimming with trials, we reach out for comfort and understanding. We assure you that at the conclusion of this discussion, we will unite our hearts and voices in a prayerful appeal, lifting those who suffer into the embrace of the divine, seeking solace and strength for each weary soul. Though he slay me, yet will I hope in him, I will surely defend my ways to his face. Job chapter 13 verse 15. These profound words, uttered by Job in the midst of his afflictions, encapsulate the paradox of faith. They reflect a trust that endures even through the fiercest storms, a hope that remains unshaken despite the seeming silence of the heavens. Job's steadfastness offers a template for our own struggles, challenging us to maintain our hope and integrity, to stand firm and trust in the ultimate wisdom and justice of God, even when our comprehension falters. Imagine a man of great wealth, respected by his community, and blessed with a large family and good health. This man is Job. In the opening chapters of the book of Job, we are introduced to his many blessings and his unwavering piety. However, his story swiftly takes a dramatic turn. In Job 1 and 2, we learn that God permits Satan to test Job's faith by stripping him of his wealth, children, and health. In a series of swift calamities, Job loses his livestock, his servants, his sons, and daughters, and is finally afflicted with painful sores from head to toe. Now, pause and consider. In such immense suffering, how would a lesser man react? Would he curse his fate or denounce his faith? Yet, Job, in the depth of his agony, tears his robe, shaves his head, and falls to the ground in worship, proclaiming, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." In chapters 3 to 31, Job, overwhelmed by the weight of his suffering, finally voices his profound anguish and perplexity. He curses the day of his birth and longs for an end to his misery. His friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, attempt to comfort him but end up accusing him of secret sins, arguing that his suffering must be a just punishment. Job passionately defends his innocence and wrestles with the enigma of his undeserved suffering, questioning why the righteous suffer while the wicked often prosper. These dialogues form the heart of Job's Lamentations, a profound and relentless examination of human suffering and divine justice. In their harsh critiques, the friends persist in their traditional theology. Suffering is invariably a consequence of sin. Yet, Job, standing firm in his righteousness, cries out for an audience with God to plead his case and to seek understanding. Then, in chapters 38 to 41, the narrative takes a majestic turn as God himself answers Job out of a whirlwind. God does not provide a direct answer to Job's questions but instead reaffirms his omnipotence and the mysteries of his creation. He speaks of the vastness of the earth, the intricacies of the heavens, the majestic creatures, and the forces of nature, questioning Job's understanding of these great mysteries. "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth?" God asks. Through these divine speeches, Job is reminded of the limitations of human wisdom and the boundless nature of divine wisdom and power. God's response, though not a direct explanation, brings Job to a place of humility and reverent submission, recognizing that finite human understanding cannot fully grasp the infinite ways of the divine. Finally, in Job chapter 42 verses 10 to 17, we witness the restoration of Job. After his profound encounter with God, Job repents for speaking of things he did not understand. God rebukes Job's friends for not speaking rightly about him and instructs them to offer a burnt offering, which Job must pray over. Job's fortunes are restored. He receives twice as much as he had before, including livestock, servants, and a new family. The story concludes with Job living to a ripe old age, seeing his children and grandchildren to the fourth generation. It's a poignant reminder of faithfulness rewarded, yet it does not diminish the searing questions about suffering that have been raised. In the narrative of Job, we are beckoned to trust in God's justice and mercy, even when we can't see the full picture. In the grand tapestry of the wisdom literature of the Bible, the story of Job stands out as a profound exploration of human suffering, faith, and divine justice. Wisdom literature, which encompasses books such as Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon, seeks to address the fundamental mysteries and ethical questions of life, often pondering the nature of suffering, the pursuit of righteousness, and the ways of God. Job, a figure of monumental patience and steadfast faith, is introduced to us as a man, blameless and upright, one who feared God and shunned evil. His narrative unfolds in a manner that probes the deepest recesses of human anguish and theological inquiry. It invites readers to wrestle with the seemingly inexplicable trials that befall a righteous individual. The structure of Job's story can be viewed as unfolding in three distinct movements. The first, in the opening chapters, sets the stage with a celestial dialogue between God and Satan. Here, Satan challenges Job's integrity, suggesting that his faith is merely a product of his prosperity. God permits Satan to test Job, resulting in the swift and devastating loss of his wealth, children, and health. This movement serves to initiate the age-old question, why do the righteous suffer? The second movement, spanning chapters 3 to 31, delves into the poetic dialogues between Job and his friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. These friends, each embodying traditional wisdom, propose that Job's suffering must be a consequence of some hidden sin. They adhere to the retributive justice principle, the belief that suffering is inherently linked to moral failings. Job, however, staunchly maintains his innocence and grapples with his anguish, voicing profound laments and existential questions. This section is rich with rhetorical questions, deep introspection, and philosophical disputes, and it illuminates the limits of human understanding when it comes to divine purposes. The third and final movement is marked by God's response to Job in chapters 38 to 41. Out of a whirlwind, God addresses Job, not with direct answers, but with a series of questions that underscore his omnipotence and the vast mysteries of his creation. Through this divine discourse, Job's perspective is reshaped. He moves from questioning God's justice to recognizing the grandeur and incomprehensibility of God's plans. In this humbling encounter, Job finds resolution, not through understanding the specifics of his suffering but through encountering the divine presence. The conclusion of the book, in chapter 42, presents Job's restoration. God restores his fortunes, granting him twice as much as he had before and blessing him with a new family. This restoration serves as a testament to the triumph of faith and integrity amidst overwhelming adversity. The narrative of Job thus profoundly shapes the understanding of faith amidst suffering. It challenges the simplistic interpretations of retributive justice and encourages a deeper engagement with the complexities of divine sovereignty. Job's story invites believers to maintain faith even when faced with inexplicable suffering and to trust in the ultimate wisdom and goodness of God. Ultimately, the Book of Job stands as a beacon of hope and reflection, offering comfort to those who suffer and urging them to look beyond the immediacy of their trials to the broader, often mysterious, purposes of the divine. Through Job's steadfast faith and the divine response, we are reminded of the vastness of God's wisdom and the call to trust in His overarching plan, even when we cannot fathom it. The story of Job is often situated in the patriarchal era, harking back to the times of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This era, marked by its ancient traditions and nomadic lifestyles, presents a backdrop where oral tradition played a significant role in preserving history and disseminating wisdom. As such, the narrative of Job, while profound in its theological depth, is also deeply woven into the cultural and historical fabric of its time. Job is portrayed as a wealthy patriarch, owning vast herds of livestock and commanding numerous servants. His wealth, described in terms of flocks and herds, aligns with what we understand of the economic structures of the patriarchal societies. Moreover, the familial structures depicted, large households including children and numerous dependents, are characteristic of the era. Thus, Job's narrative provides not only theological insights but also a window into the societal norms and values of ancient times. When we examine the literary style of the Book of Job, we discover a remarkable blend of prose and poetry. The opening and closing chapters are written in prose, forming a narrative framework that encapsulates the poetic dialogues occupying the central sections. This structure is somewhat reflective of other ancient Near Eastern literary works, where a blend of narrative and poetic elements is employed to convey profound truths and existential musings. A comparison with the Babylonian text, Ludlow Bel Nemeqi, often translated as, "I will praise the Lord of wisdom," reveals intriguing similarities and differences. Both texts delve into the theme of human suffering and the quest for divine justice. Ludlow Bel Nemeqi portrays the sufferings of a pious man named Shubshi-Mashur-Shakhan, who, much like Job, endures great afflictions and seeks understanding of his plight. The lamentations and dialogues within both texts explore deep existential questions and reflect a shared cultural concern with the mysteries of divine will and human suffering. However, while the Babylonian text tends to focus on the restoration and vindication of the sufferer through the intervention of divine wisdom, the Book of Job goes further, presenting a direct encounter between Job and God. This dialogue, filled with rhetorical questions and vivid imagery, underscores the vastness of divine knowledge and the limitations of human understanding. It is this profound theological discourse that sets Job apart, offering not only a narrative of personal restoration but also a transformative vision of divine majesty and mystery. In conclusion, the historical context of Job situates us in a time where patriarchal values prevailed, and oral traditions formed the bedrock of cultural transmission. The literary style, a harmonious blend of prose and poetry, connects Job to broader Near Eastern literary traditions while carving out a unique theological niche. As we reflect on the story of Job and its historical backdrop, we are reminded of the timeless quest for understanding amidst suffering, a quest that transcends cultures and epochs. Let us delve into the profound tapestry of significant biblical figures in the Book of Job. At the heart of this ancient narrative, we encounter Job himself, a man whose faith undergoes the severest of tests. Job is portrayed as a paragon of virtue and piety, a man whom God himself describes as blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Yet, it is precisely this faith and integrity that become the crucible for divine testing. Job's journey from prosperity through desolation and, finally, to restoration is a testament to the endurance of faith amidst incomprehensible suffering. Job's story begins with an almost unfathomable series of calamities. Stripped of his wealth, bereaved of his children, and afflicted with excruciating physical pain, Job's initial response is one of profound sorrow mingled with unwavering trust in God. His famous declaration, "The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised," encapsulates the depth of his faith. Yet, as the narrative progresses, Job's lamentations grow louder. He wrestles with the apparent injustice of his plight, oscillating between despair and desperate hope. Enter Job's friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. They arrive with the intention of comforting Job, but their solace soon morphs into a series of theological debates. Eliphaz, the oldest of the three, speaks from a wealth of personal experiences and visions. He suggests that suffering is the result of sin and encourages Job to seek God's forgiveness. Bildad, invoking the wisdom of ancestral traditions, urges Job to repent, convinced that divine justice operates on a straightforward cause and effect basis. Zophar, the youngest among Job's three friends, is more dogmatic and stern. He insists that Job's suffering is deserved and that Job should submit to God's discipline. These friends represent traditional perspectives on suffering, beliefs rooted in the conviction that righteous living leads to blessings while sin results in calamity. Their dialogues with Job are characterized by rigid doctrinal positions, which fail to accommodate the complexities of his situation. They offer explanations devoid of empathy, and their inability to genuinely comfort Job only deepens his sense of isolation and bewilderment. Amidst this cacophony of voices, a fourth figure emerges, Elihu. This younger friend, not originally introduced with the other three, steps in when their arguments have run their course. Elihu's perspective is significant because he offers a different viewpoint. He criticizes both Job for self-righteousness and Job's friends for failing to present a convincing argument. Elihu contends that suffering may serve as a divine correction, a means through which God communicates his wisdom and purifies one's character. He emphasizes God's justice and sovereignty, proposing that human understanding is inherently limited and that one must trust in God's greater purposes. While Elihu's speeches introduce fresh theological dimensions to the discourse, it is ultimately God's voice from the whirlwind that concludes the debate. However, the significance of these human voices, Job, Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar, and Elihu, lies not merely in their individual stances but in the broader tapestry of human wrestling with divine mystery that they collectively illustrate. Job stands as the central figure, embodying the struggle of faith under trial. His friends, with their well-meaning yet flawed counsel, reflect the myriad ways in which humans attempt to rationalize suffering. And Elihu, with his youthful fervor, reminds us that fresh perspectives can sometimes illuminate aspects of divine truth obscured by established traditions. Together, these figures offer a rich exploration of the themes of suffering, justice, and faith, inviting readers across the ages to ponder the complexities of the human condition and the enigmatic ways of the divine. Imagine, if you will, a world filled with countless forms of suffering, where every soul, at one time or another, grapples with the question of pain and its purpose. It is in such a world that we encounter three monumental theological concepts: theodicy, human suffering, and divine sovereignty. Theodicy, an age-old term, derives from the Greek words theos, meaning God, and dike, meaning justice. It addresses the perennial question: how can a good and omnipotent God allow evil to exist? This dilemma has perplexed theologians and philosophers for centuries. Picture, for a moment, a castle besieged by dark shadows. These shadows represent our suffering and worldly tribulations. Theodicy seeks to illuminate the castle with rays of divine justice and goodness, piercing through the darkness. Now, let us turn our gaze to human suffering. Why do the righteous suffer? This question is as ancient as it is profound. Consider Job, a man described as blameless and upright. Yet, his story is a cascade of afflictions, a great tempest of losses that would break many a mortal soul. Some interpret Job's suffering as a test, a crucible of faith. They argue that suffering refines and purifies, much like gold in a furnace. Others see it as a mystery, one that woven into the fabric of existence leaves us pondering the tapestry's ultimate design. Divine sovereignty, on the other hand, reminds us of God's ultimate control and inscrutability. Envision a grand artist, whose masterpiece is so vast and intricate that the individual brushstrokes seem chaotic and perplexing to the observer. Only when one steps back does the full splendor of the artwork become apparent. In our mortal condition, we are often too close to the canvas. Divine sovereignty assures us that the artist, God, holds the grand design and that his wisdom, though beyond our comprehension, is inherently trustworthy. And thus, within these theological concepts, we find not final answers, but profound reflections. They invite us to peer through the shadowed glass, to seek understanding and, perhaps most importantly, to hold on to faith amidst the mysteries of suffering. In our contemplation of suffering and divine justice, it behooves us to turn our eyes to the sagacious voices that have echoed through the corridors of theological thought. Such voices have grappled with the perplexing question of why a benevolent and omnipotent Creator permits the existence of pain and suffering in His creation. Among these voices, three stand prominently in the annals of Christian theology: Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, and an esteemed modern thinker, C.S. Lewis. Augustine of Hippo, a stalwart theologian of the early Church, wrestled mightily with what is known as the problem of evil. Augustine posited that evil is not a substance but rather a privation of good, a concept that seeks to absolve God from being the author of evil. He argued that God, in His omniscience, permits evil to exist as a consequence of free will. Through the exercise of free will, humanity can choose either good or evil, and it is in this capacity for choice that the potential for evil lies. Augustine's profound insight reveals that suffering and wickedness, while apparent blights upon the world, serve a greater divine purpose, often concealed from our limited understanding. In the monumental shadow of Augustine, we find Thomas Aquinas, whose Thomistic synthesis of faith and reason remains a cornerstone of Christian theology. Aquinas asserted that human reason, though marred by the fall, can still apprehend truths about God's nature and His creation. With his characteristic clarity, Aquinas addressed the conundrum of suffering by emphasizing the inherent goods that may emerge from affliction. Trial and tribulation, he proposed, can lead to the perfection of the soul, such as the cultivation of virtues like patience and fortitude. Aquinas's integration of philosophical rigor and theological doctrine provides a robust framework to comprehend how suffering, lamentable though it may be, fits within the vast, unfathomable tapestry of God's providence. In more recent times, the voice of C.S. Lewis has resonated deeply with many who grapple with the sorrows of this world. His works, The Problem of Pain and A Grief Observed, offer poignant and personal reflections on the nature of suffering from a modern perspective. Lewis acknowledged the emotional and intellectual tumult that suffering induces. In The Problem of Pain, he pondered the paradox of a loving God allowing pain to persist, suggesting that pain, though grievous, acts as a divine megaphone that rouses a deaf world. It is through suffering, Lewis contended, that we are often able to draw closest to God, recognizing our dependence upon Him. Through his own harrowing experience of losing his wife, chronicled in A Grief Observed, Lewis' meditations provide a candid and profoundly moving testament to the struggles of faith amidst personal anguish, yet also the transformative power of trust in God amidst such trials. As we navigate the vexed waters of suffering and divine purpose, let us take solace and guidance from these towering figures. Their wisdom, born from deep reflection and heartfelt struggle, offers us not only intellectual clarity but also spiritual consolation, fortifying our faith as we confront the inevitable pains of our earthly journey. In the vast tapestry of human history, the story of Job stands out as a brilliant thread, woven with the luminous hues of faith, endurance, and divine mystery. It gleams with a particularly sharp light because it confronts an enduring question: why do the righteous suffer? Job's unwavering faith amidst suffering has, for centuries, been a beacon for true believers. Here was a man who, despite being stripped of his wealth, family, and health, refused to curse God. His story, enshrined in the sacred texts, serves not just as a narrative but as an enduring example, an exemplar of steadfast devotion. Job's profound lamentations and unwavering hope illustrate the depth of his faith, which remains unshaken even in the face of seemingly unending torment. His towering patience and trust reflect a purity of belief that many aspire to emulate. The trials Job endured invite contemplation on the concept that suffering can serve as a test and purification of faith. This notion, deeply ingrained in theological discourse, suggests that the tribulations and afflictions we face on the earthly plane may function as a crucible. Through suffering, the baser elements of our being can be burnt away, leaving a purer, more refined faith. This is not to say that suffering is desired, but rather that it can be instrumental in revealing and strengthening the metal of one's devotion. Job's trials illuminate this principle. His faith was not diminished by his suffering but was instead burnished and revealed in its truest form. Biblical interpretations have long supported the concept of redemptive suffering. This theological perspective posits that through suffering, individuals may partake in a profound spiritual journey, one that mirrors the trials of the righteous in sacred scripture. Such suffering is not meaningless or cruel but serves a higher purpose within the divine plan. In Job's narrative, his eventual restoration, his ultimate redemption, serves to underscore the belief that suffering, endured with faith and patience, can lead to divine favor and spiritual growth. The restoration of Job's fortunes and the doubling of his previous blessings illustrate the potential for rebirth and renewal that lies at the heart of redemptive suffering. Thus, the tale of Job reverberates through the ages, echoing the profound truths of faith amidst adversity. His unwavering trust in God, even when confronted with insurmountable pain, continues to inspire and fortify those who encounter hardship. The paradigms of testing, purification, and redemption articulated in his story provide not only a theological framework but also a source of comfort and hope for believers seeking meaning in their own suffering. When we speak of suffering, many instinctively turn their gaze towards the biblical narrative of Job, hoping to unearth some semblance of meaning in the midst of life's tempestuous ordeals. It is a profound tale, one steeped in tradition, venerable in age, and unwavering in its resolve to probe the mysteries of divine justice. Yet, as we examine this narrative through the lens of contemporary thought, various challenges to traditional views emerge, inviting a deeper inquiry into Job's tale. Indeed, one prominent challenge arises from alternative readings that question the divine causality of suffering itself. From this perspective, suffering is not necessarily a test orchestrated by a sovereign deity but may stem from the natural order of a world in which chaos, not divine intentionality, plays a significant role. In such readings, the capriciousness of life's trials finds no predestination in the celestial courts but rather unfolds within the randomness of existence. Here, the innocent, like Job, suffer not because of some inscrutable divine purpose but simply because the fabric of the world is such that suffering is an inevitable part of the human experience. Critical scholarship furthers this discourse by scrutinizing the historical and theological consistency embedded within the text. Scholars raise pertinent questions. Is the story of Job an actual historical account or merely an allegorical narrative designed to address the perplexities of faith amidst trials? Moreover, the theological constructs that underpin the book, such as the unwavering justice of God juxtaposed with the existence of inexplicable suffering, are rigorously examined. The poetic dialogues, reminiscent of ancient literary traditions, are dissected for their doctrinal implications and narrative coherence, compelling us to reconsider the simplicity of traditional interpretations. Markedly, modern philosophical debates on the nature of suffering and divine justice present formidable challenges to orthodox views. Theodicy, or the defense of God's goodness in the face of evil, is a central concern. Philosophers grapple with the paradoxes presented within the Book of Job. How can a benevolent and omnipotent God allow for such seemingly unjust suffering? Is there merit in believing that suffering is a divine tool for moral and spiritual edification? Or ought we to discard such notions in favor of a more existential understanding of our struggles? In these debates, one finds the echoes of thinkers like Epicurus, who questioned the compatibility of divine omnibenevolence with the existence of suffering. Skeptics argue that the inherent contradictions within Job's narrative highlight deeper theological dilemmas that cannot be easily reconciled within the framework of traditional theism. The challenge is thus laid bare: to reconcile faith with reason, to uphold belief amidst the undeniable reality of human suffering, and to seek a theology that can withstand the scrutiny of philosophical rigor. Turning to these alternative interpretations and critical analyses is not an exercise in diminishing the value of Job's story but rather an invitation to enrich our understanding. As C.S. Lewis himself ventured through his own trials, pondering the profound depths of grief and pain, he illuminated new paths of contemplation without discarding the old. So too must we navigate these scholarly and philosophical challenges, allowing them to refine our faith, deepen our empathy, and perhaps lead us to a more nuanced appreciation of the divine mysteries that govern our existence. As we conclude this exploration, let us remain steadfast in our quest for truth, embracing both the comforts of tradition and the insights of contemporary scholarship, seeking always to better comprehend the unfathomable ways through which suffering, faith, and divine justice intertwine in the grand tapestry of life. Dear reader, as we delve into the variegated tapestry of comparative religious beliefs concerning suffering, let our minds and hearts be open to the wisdom of ages, regardless of creed or geography. In the ancient Near East, the concept of suffering and divine justice was a prevailing theme that reverberated through numerous cultures and their sacred texts. The Babylonian Ludlul Bel Nemeqi, for example, tells a story remarkably similar to that of Job. It portrays a virtuous man who endures severe tribulations, expressing lamentations and seeking understanding of his plight. This narrative from Mesopotamia casts an insightful light on a shared human condition, a quest for meaning amidst inexplicable hardship. Turning our gaze towards the broader spectrum of wisdom literature, let us consider the Book of Ecclesiastes, a somber yet poignant reflection found within our own biblical canon. Here, the preacher laments the futility and unpredictability of life, resonating with the existential queries that Job himself raised. Ecclesiastes, along with proverbs from various cultures, offers timeless aphorisms and contemplations that, while differing in flavor, echo a universal yearning to comprehend the enigma of human existence and suffering. Now, let us cross the threshold into Eastern philosophies, particularly Hinduism and Buddhism. Hindu thought is imbued with the concept of karma, an intricate web of cause and effect that transcends lifetimes. According to this belief, suffering can be a consequence of actions from one's past lives, a sort of cosmic justice that operates with an inscrutable precision. It is a mechanism by which the soul learns, evolves, and ultimately seeks liberation, moksha, from the cycle of rebirth. Buddhism, on the other hand, approaches suffering with a unique emphasis known as the Four Noble Truths. The first truth directly acknowledges that suffering, dukkha, is an intrinsic part of the human experience. From life's fleeting pleasures that inevitably lead to dissatisfaction, to the profound pains of loss and bereavement, suffering is depicted not as an anomaly but as an inherent aspect of existence. The Buddha's path, elaborated through the Eightfold Path, offers a practical guide to alleviating this suffering, aiming towards the attainment of nirvana, a state of ultimate liberation and peace. As we transit through these diverse religious landscapes, what stands out is a common thread: a profound introspection into the nature of human suffering and an earnest search for its meaning and resolution. Whether it is the Stoic acceptance seen in Job, the rational aphorisms of Ecclesiastes, the karmic justice in Hinduism, or the practical wisdom of Buddhism, each tradition provides its own map through the labyrinth of grief and despair. Thus, as we reflect upon these comparative beliefs, perhaps we may find solace in the recognition that the quest for understanding suffering is not a solitary endeavor. It is a shared journey, one that transcends the boundaries of time, place, and religious affiliation. Through this journey, may we draw closer to empathy, humility, and a deeper appreciation for the myriad ways through which humanity seeks to grapple with the age-old question of suffering. In closing, let us contemplate not only the differences but the convergences of these spiritual insights. Despite the divergent paths, the goal remains remarkably unified: an earnest striving for a realm where suffering is not merely endured but transcended, and where peace, both inner and outer, ultimately prevails. In the realm of human knowledge, archaeology often grants us a most profound revelation regarding our ancient past. Imagine, dear listener, the unearthing of weathered manuscripts and long-buried artifacts, each one whispering tales of epochs past, each one a silent witness to the grand narratives of human existence. The Book of Job, nestled within the sacred tomes of the Old Testament, stands as a beacon of wisdom, a drama of suffering and faith. Yet, it is through the patient and meticulous work of archaeologists that we come to perceive the tangible world in which such narratives thrived. Envision the barren landscapes and ancient ruins, the very soil that may have once echoed with the lamentations of a man named Job. Manuscripts discovered in the dusty recesses of ancient libraries, like the famed Dead Sea Scrolls, offer critical context. These scrolls, hidden for centuries in the caves of Qumran, have provided insight into the textual traditions closely related to Job's tale. The consistency and variance in these texts enrich our understanding of how Job's story was preserved and conveyed through generations. Additionally, artifacts uncovered from Mesopotamia and Egypt present a mosaic of cultural and literary influences. Mesopotamian tablets, inscribed with cuneiform script, tell tales of human suffering and divine interaction remarkably similar to Job's plight. One notable example is the Ludlow Bel Nemeqi, a Babylonian poem expressing the suffering and restoration of a righteous man. Comparisons between these texts illuminate a shared human concern across cultures: the struggle to comprehend suffering and the search for divine justice. Egyptian influences, too, permeate the narrative framework of Job. The dispute between a man and his Ba is an Egyptian text exploring themes of anguish and existential questioning. Such parallels suggest a cross-pollination of ideas in the ancient Near East, where the borders between cultures were often fluid, allowing for the exchange of philosophies and the weaving of complex literary tapestries. These archaeological findings do more than just authenticate historical context. they underscore a universal human condition. Through digging into the earth, we uncover not just relics but echoes of our shared quest for meaning in the face of adversity. As we delve into these treasures of the past, let us reflect on the enduring resonance of Job's story. His struggle, clothed in antiquity, speaks with a voice that remains vibrant and relevant. For in every shard of pottery, every fragment of parchment, we find not just the remnants of a bygone era, but bridges that connect us to the enduring human spirit, ever seeking, ever questioning. Thus, dear listeners, let us marvel at the tapestry of history that archaeology lays before us. In each discovery, we find a thread that binds us to our ancestors, to their trials, their faith, and ultimately, to a richer understanding of our own journey through the realms of suffering and hope. It is in the very nature of scholarly debate to question and to probe, to dissect and to piece together. When it comes to the Book of Job, the academic community has certainly embraced this spirit of inquiry. Scholars from every corner of the world and from various disciplines have engaged in rigorous discussions about the historical accuracy of Job's story. These learned men and women have often found themselves at an impasse, unable to definitively determine the true nature of Job's existence. Some propose that Job was a historical figure, a man who truly lived and whose sufferings were real, though perhaps amplified over time by oral tradition. Others argue that Job is a literary construct, a character created to convey deep moral and theological truths. The lack of concrete evidence makes it impossible to settle the debate definitively. This mirrors much of the mystery that envelops ancient texts. They blur the lines between history and myth, between the literal and the allegorical. Moving beyond the question of historical accuracy, scholars also find themselves fascinated by the literary structure of the Book of Job. Is it a seamless narrative, or is it a complex interplay of prose and poetry? The opening and closing chapters, written in prose, frame the central poetic dialogues, leading some to suggest that these prose sections might have been later additions, designed to give context to the profound poetic content within. The poetry itself is rich and textured, filled with laments and dialogues that explore the depths of human suffering and the enigma of divine justice. The contrast between the straightforward narrative style of the prose and the evocative, sometimes ambiguous nature of the poetry invites readers to engage in a multi-layered exploration of the text. As for the dialogues between Job and God, their interpretations are as varied as the scholars who study them. Some see these divine speeches as a comforting reaffirmation of God's omnipresence and omnipotence, offering reassurance that all is within His divine control. Others interpret these dialogues as highlighting the inscrutability of God's ways, leaving Job, and by extension, humanity, with more questions than answers. There are also those who argue that God's response is less an explanation and more a demonstration of the limits of human understanding. They suggest that these dialogues illustrate a fundamental truth, that man's perspective is limited, and that divine wisdom often operates on a plane beyond human comprehension. This interpretation can be both humbling and unsettling, forcing readers to grapple with the reality that some aspects of life and suffering may forever remain a mystery. Thus, the scholarly debates around the Book of Job are not merely academic exercises. They reflect the ongoing human struggle to make sense of suffering, justice, and the divine. They invite us to ponder over profound questions and to seek understanding, even when such understanding appears elusive. The story of Job, with its rich tapestry of issues and its depth of emotion, continues to be a fertile ground for intellectual and spiritual exploration, a testament to its enduring power and relevance. In the timeless narrative of Job, we encounter a world where the seemingly impossible becomes a canvas for discerning the divine. The supernatural elements within Job's story beckon us to look beyond the mundane and perceive the veiled threads of a grander tapestry. These miraculous events do not merely stand as isolated marvels but as poignant reminders of the interplay between the seen and unseen realms. As we delve into the supernatural phenomena described in the Book of Job, we witness moments that defy reason and elevate our understanding. For instance, the celestial court scene in Job 1, where the sons of God present themselves before the Lord and Satan makes his entrance. This scene invites us into a divine council far beyond earthly comprehension, suggesting a cosmic dimension to human suffering and divine decision-making. Take, for instance, the whirlwind through which God addresses Job. This is not merely a natural occurrence but a theophany, a visible manifestation of divine presence. Here, the whirlwind symbolizes the awe-inspiring power and inscrutability of God, reinforcing his omnipotence and the vast chasm between divine wisdom and human understanding. In this dramatic revelation, we're reminded of the holy mystery that envelops God's actions and purposes. The scientific mind might seek to demystify such phenomena, striving to separate natural events from their supernatural interpretations. One might argue that the whirlwind is simply a weather event, explicable through meteorological science. Yet, such analyses, while valuable, often strip away the profound theological significance embedded in these occurrences. The theological perspective offers a richer, more nuanced narrative. It recognizes that the miraculous in Job is not meant to be dissected as mere anomalies of nature but to be perceived as deliberate acts within God's sovereign design. These events are infused with purpose, pointing towards truths that transcend empirical evidence. This discourse between scientific analysis and theological interpretation brings us to the heart of the human quest for understanding. It is, in essence, a dialogue between seeking to know and humbly accepting that some truths might forever remain cloaked in divine mystery. As we ponder these miraculous events, let us embrace both the pursuit of knowledge and the wisdom found in acknowledging our finite comprehension. Through Job's story, we learn to see the miraculous not as disruptions of the natural order but as windows into the divine, revealing the depth and majesty of a Creator whose ways are higher than ours. The story of Job, with its profound exploration of suffering, faith, and divine justice, has left an indelible impact on faith and practice among believers throughout the ages. Many personal testimonies highlight how individuals, much like Job himself, have clung to their faith in the midst of severe trials. One woman, for instance, recalls how, upon losing her husband and facing financial ruin, she found solace in Job's unwavering trust in God. She describes how Job's lamentations mirrored her own grief, yet his ultimate surrender to God's will inspired her to remain steadfast in her faith. Through Job's story, she discovered a divine companionship in her suffering, a reminder that God's presence transcends earthly woes. In another account, a man shares how Job's resilience helped him cope with a devastating diagnosis. He emphasizes the comfort found in Job's determination to hope in him, despite insurmountable pain and loss. This embodiment of hope became a beacon for his own journey, turning what seemed an insurmountable mountain into a path of spiritual ascent. Job's text also holds a venerable place in the liturgical practices of various Christian traditions. In many churches, passages from the Book of Job are read during times of communal mourning and reflection, especially in the liturgical seasons where the themes of suffering and redemption come to the fore, such as Lent and Holy Week. The responsive readings often include Job's poignant cries alongside prophetic assurances of God's faithfulness, fostering a collective experience of both solidarity and hope. In funeral services, selections from Job are sometimes read to offer comfort to the grieving. The words, "The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord," resonate deeply, providing a framework within which the faithful can process their sorrow and find solace in divine providence. Additionally, the teachings from Job have palpably increased empathy and support within religious communities for those who suffer. Recognizing that suffering can touch anyone, devout groups have organized support systems inspired by Job's endurance. Some churches have established Job's ministries, named in honor of Job's suffering and steadfast faith, dedicated to providing practical assistance, emotional support, and spiritual counsel to members facing hardship. These ministries often foster small support groups where individuals can share their struggles and find mutual encouragement rooted in faith. In one such group, a participant recounts how hearing others' experiences of suffering and resilience reminded her that she is not alone in her pain, much like Job's eventual consolation came through divine dialogue and renewed community. Moreover, the empathy birthed from Job's trials has spurred congregations to engage in broader social activism, addressing issues of injustice and inequality, recognizing that true faith involves not just enduring personal pain but also alleviating the suffering of others. Inspired by Job's story, various faith communities have launched relief programs, from food pantries to international aid projects, anchoring their mission in the belief that serving others in their affliction is a testament to living out the faith Job exemplified. In essence, Job's narrative has transcended its ancient origins to inspire and mold contemporary expressions of faith and practice. His story, though steeped in suffering, ultimately speaks to the enduring presence of hope and divine solidarity in human tribulations. It beckons believers not only to seek solace in their trials but to become beacons of light for others facing their own dark nights of the soul. There is a certain charm in observing how the timeless themes of an ancient text like the Book of Job have woven their way into the rich tapestry of cultural history. In artwork and literature, from medieval manuscripts to modern paintings, the tale of Job has inspired countless forms of expression. Imagine for a moment the beautiful, ornate pages of medieval illuminated manuscripts, where the meticulous scribe has worked both pen and brush to capture the agony and eventual redemption of Job. These manuscripts, often elaborately decorated, were more than just texts. They were testaments to the enduring human spirit and the quest for understanding divine will amidst suffering. Job, with his sores and sorrow, his emaciated frame and tear-stricken face, becomes a poignant symbol of piety and patience, captured in vibrant hues and intricate designs. Moving forward in time, the canvas of Renaissance and Baroque painters would also embrace the story of Job. With oils and deft strokes, masters like Michelangelo and Rembrandt brought Job's despair and faith to visceral life. One can almost feel the texture of Job's ash-covered skin, see the despair in his pleading eyes, and yet, sense the indomitable spirit that refuses to yield. These paintings, hanging grandly in cathedrals or galleries, invite viewers into a moment of intimate reflection upon the perennial battle between human suffering and divine inscrutability. But the story of Job is not confined merely to visual arts. It weaves through the annals of literature, deeply influencing writers across centuries. Franz Kafka, for instance, drew heavily from Job in his work, The Trial, where the inexplicable suffering and seeming arbitrary nature of the protagonist's torment echoes Job's own trials. Similarly, Herman Melville's Moby Dick is imbued with the spirit of Job. Captain Ahab's monomaniacal quest against the great white whale is as much a defiance against perceived divine injustice as it is a struggle against nature. Through these literary giants, Job's voice intertwines with modern existential angst and the quest for meaning in a seemingly indifferent universe. Poets, too, have found the lamentations and affirmations of Job a fertile ground for their musings. The poignant verses of T.S. Eliot, for example, often reflect the profound existential inquiries that parallel Job's dialogues with God and his friends. Each line, each stanza, carries an echo of that ancient cry for understanding and vindication. In modern times, Job's influence extends into the realm of contemporary media. Films and television series have embraced the themes of the Book of Job, translating ancient anguish and resolve into visual storytelling for new generations. Whether it is in a direct adaptation or through narratives that explore similar themes of undeserved suffering and relentless faith, the essence of Job persists. Characters who face irrevocable loss, who wrestle with faith amidst despair, who search for meaning in their anguish, are all modern incarnations of Job. They resonate with audiences, reminding them of the enduring nature of these fundamental human experiences. In all these cultural representations, there is a thread that unites them. It is the recognition of Job's story as more than just a biblical tale. It is a mirror reflecting our own struggles, our quests for answers, and our hopes for divine justice and mercy. Through art, literature, and media, the legacy of Job continues to inspire, challenge, and comfort those who encounter it, proving that his ancient cry still has the power to move the human heart today. In reflecting upon our journey through the narrative of Job, we witness a tale steeped in profound faith and unyielding devotion. From the outset, Job stands as a beacon of unshakable trust in the divine, even as he traverses valleys of unprecedented suffering. His trials, loss of wealth, loss of progeny, and afflictions upon his health are not mere historical footnotes but echoes of the agonies that countless souls endure across generations. The discourse between Job and his friends, and later, the divine dialogue with God, offers a rich tapestry of theological debate. Here, within the folds of this ancient text, we find ourselves grappling with questions that resonate deeply. Why do the righteous suffer? How do we reconcile a benevolent God with the existence of evil and suffering? These inquiries are not easily quelled. They invite us to ponder, to challenge, and ultimately, to deepen our understanding of the divine. Beyond the scrolls and parchments of biblical text, Job's story weaves itself into the very fabric of our cultures. From the medieval scribes illuminating manuscripts in dimly lit scriptoriums, to modern artists rendering their anguish and hope on expansive canvases, Job's narrative reverberates through time. His lamentations find echoes in the literary endeavors of Kafka, the reflections of Melville, and even the nuanced portrayals in contemporary films and television series. As we draw this contemplation to a close, it becomes clear that the story of Job is much more than a mere recounting of ancient woes. It is an invitation to explore our faith amidst suffering, to find solace in the inscrutability of divine sovereignty, and to acknowledge the profound human journey through trials of pain and redemption. Therefore, we encourage you to go beyond this reflection. Engage further with the profound questions that Job's story evokes. Subscribe to continue this journey through sacred texts and philosophical inquiries. And please, do suggest future topics for discussion, for it is through these shared explorations that our understanding deepens and our faith grows ever stronger. Heavenly Father, as we reflect on the story of Job, we bring before you all who are suffering. May your presence bring comfort and hope to those in distress. Grant us the strength to endure trials and the wisdom to find purpose in our pain. Help us trust in your divine plan, even when we do not understand it. Endow us with compassion for others suffering and inspire us to support each other through hardships. In your holy name, we pray, Amen.